Hey, what's up? Hello. How are you guys doing? Or as I guess in Texas, we say y'all. How are y'all doing? Anyways, welcome to this very first episode of The Stories That Shape Us. I'm your host, Brock Doty, and I couldn't be more excited to start this podcasting journey with you. This podcast was born from a belief that every single story worth telling comes from an individual. People have stories to tell, stories of resilience, growth, and transformation. Today, I want to share my own story, my origin story per se, of who I am, where I come from, and why this very podcast exists. So we'll dive into my upbringing and the lessons that have shaped me along the way, and most importantly, the man, the myth, the legend who inspired this journey. My grandfather, Lyle Doty. His story is one of perseverance, work ethic, hard work, unwavering determination. Values that have guided my life and the reason why the stories that shape us exist today. So, let's get into my background. I was raised by a single mother alongside my brother Mark, who is 4 years younger than me. However, he is much bigger than I am. He's 6'4", about 230 pounds, and can eat like nobody's business. Anyways, looking back, we never felt like we lacked anything. My mom always made sure that she worked hard and that she could give us a stable, loving home. While we may not have had everything, we had everything that mattered. We always had food on the table, we always had clothes on our back, and we always had shoes on our feet. But even as a kid, I felt like I was built for more. I felt like I was an A player in a B game, and that there was something bigger that I was supposed to do. I just didn't know what it was yet. Does anybody else feel like that? And honestly, it took years of experiences, challenges, and personal growth to realize that my purpose is tied to something deeper. The power of storytelling and the impact of the people who came before us. I'll get into that later on who has impacted me the most. But right now we'll get into a little bit about where I came from. I came from a small town in Montana. I grew up in small town USA. The stereotypical small town in Montana with a population of 2,500 people. It was the kind of place where, everybody knows everybody. Yeah, that can be a blessing or a curse, depending on who you ask. We had 4 restaurants, 1 grocery store, 2 gas stations. All right, and here's the kicker. We had a single stoplight right in the middle of town. I know, it's hard to believe. I know. But life was simple, and for a long time, that was all I knew. So after graduating high school, I went on to college and earned my bachelor's degree in business administration. But when I graduated, I found myself drawn back in my comfort zone of small town USA, living the small town life. I had moved to an even smaller town in Montana, Chinook, Montana, a place with fewer than 1,000 people. Town on the High Line. It's the type of town that you drive through on the highway and you blink and you miss it, right? This town had only 2 restaurants, 1 grocery store, and 1 gas station. Now here's the real kicker. It didn't even have a stoplight. But in all seriousness, at first it felt very familiar. It felt like home. But about 10 months in, I started feeling that pull again. That nagging feeling that I was meant for more. Meant for more than small town USA. I wasn't sure what exactly more had looked like, but I knew I had to find out. And so I took a leap of faith and moved to Dallas, Texas. Actually, let me back up. I picked up the phone and called my aunt and uncle who lived in Dallas and said, "Hey, can I crash with you guys until I can get on my feet?" and without hesitation, they welcomed me in with open arms. And that was all I needed. I put in my 2-week notice at work, packed my bags, loaded up my pickup, and 2 weeks later, I was on the road with my mom heading to a city of 8 million people. Yeah, you heard that right, 8 million people. From a town of 1,000 people to 8 million. Anyways, that 3-day drive, I think, was more than just a road trip. I believe that it was a turning point in my life, one that I will cherish forever. My mom and I bonded in a way that we had not bonded before. We talked about everything under the sun. Life, growing up, the journey ahead. She gave me advice about stepping out into the world as a young man. We reminisced about my childhood and the moments that had shaped me. We had also, this is a funny story. We had also tried listening to an audiobook by Kevin Hart. It was his autobiography. And about after 2 chapters in, my mom couldn't stand his narration style anymore and shut it off. So that plan quickly went out the window. Yeah. That trip, though, of course, wasn't without its challenges. Anybody who knows Montana weather knows that there's snow, and sometimes you have to drive before the snowplows get out. Well, we hit a snowstorm in Kansas, beating the snowplows to the road, driving through the fresh snow with no tracks to follow. Yeah, that was how it was. It was so nerve-wracking. You had to white knuckle it, and your butt cheeks clenched against the seat, and you're just holding on for dear life. Well, we pushed through. And of course, we made time for some fun too. We went on a little food tour. I tried crumble cookie for the first time. And let me say this, their snickerdoodles and their sugar cookies are absolutely solid. 10 out of 10 recommend. We had Chick-fil-A for lunch one day. Oh, and one night we stopped for dinner at Red Lobster. And anybody that knows me knows I love seafood, especially shrimp and crab. Anyways, and then we finally arrived in Dallas. It was about 80 degrees in February, but keep in mind, when we left Montana, it was roughly negative 10 degrees below zero. And just the week before, with the wind chill, it had been 60 degrees below zero. Like, that is chilly. I knew right away, though, that after feeling that Texas warmth, that this was home. I had to start over, though, in a big city. I couldn't rely on my support system for forever. And so moving to Dallas was more than just a change in scenery. It was a beginning of my personal and professional journey. I had a great support system, like I said, with my aunt and uncle and my 2 aunts here, but I knew I couldn't rely on them forever. If I was going to make it, I had to build something for myself. I didn't know a single person in this city of 8 million people, but, I wasn't afraid of hard work. I wasn't afraid of going out there and meeting new people. I was actually excited because I got to write my story of who I am, not be judged by preconceived notions. But I was ready. I was ready to take on the challenge of making a name for myself. So, fast forward to today, March 1st, 2025. I've taken master's courses at Texas Christian University, TCU. I have a job that I enjoy, and I feel incredibly blessed for the opportunity that I've had all along the way, because so many doors have opened down here. But even now, I know I can't settle. I will always be a small town boy at heart, navigating life in the big city, but I promise you, I'm just getting started. So let's get into this. This is the story of my Grandpa Lyle. He is the real heart of this episode and the inspiration behind this podcast. Lyle Doty, his story begins in 1937. His story begins in Stanley, North Dakota in 1937. And from a young age, life tested him in many ways that many of us cannot imagine. Like, get this. When he was still in the womb, waiting to make his grand debut into the world, his father had tragically passed away in a drowning accident. He jumped off a bridge to swim with some friends, and in an instant, my grandfather and his brother, Gene, were left without a father, being raised by a single mother. You know, with no stable home, they were just passed from family member to family member, not out of love, but just like as extra hands for manual labor on the farm. Stability wasn't something that he knew growing up, but hard work, that became his way of life. Determined to change his life and his life circumstances, Lyle joined the Army, and after graduating high school, he was drafted and sent to Korea to fight in the Korean War. It was there, in the toughest conditions, that his resilience was truly forged. I'm a firm believer that forged him and his next step that he was going to take on in life. When he returned home, he settled in Kalispell, Montana, where his entrepreneurial spirit took root. With nothing but grit, determination, and a strong work ethic, he bought a D9 Caterpillar bulldozer. Then he started carving out logging roads in the mountains, and that same drive that he had led him to help battle a devastating fire in Idaho. It was the Sundance Fire of 1967, a blaze that consumed over 50,000 acres and took 2 firefighters' lives. He wasn't just building a business, but he was part of something bigger than himself. He was shaping the land and protecting communities. Eventually, he traded in his bulldozer for a single Kenworth logging truck. 1 truck turned to 2, 2 trucks turned to 3, and soon Lyle had built an entire empire of 7 logging trucks that helped log the Flathead Valley. This is cool. I'll tell you this story. Lyle also played a significant role for loggers in the state of Montana. He was the Log Association president. He also helped form a convoy across the state down Highway 93. You may have heard of it, the Great Northwest Log Haul of 1988. Many of us weren't even born yet. I know I wasn't. Anyways, the date was May 13th, 1988, and a convoy of log trucks more than 12 miles long. 12 miles of just log trucks. Man, I know I hate sitting in traffic, but 12 miles of trucks, that's crazy. Rolled down U.S. Highway 93 in Montana, and several onlookers looked and cheered as over 500 logging trucks, fully loaded with logs, passed by one by one by one. And this impressive display was actually a unique form of protest by the local Loggers Association, orchestrated by none other, you guessed it, Lyle Doty. Loggers across the state were frustrated by an increased amount of protected wilderness and court rulings that have tampered with timber harvesting, and so many timber sales were canceled, and that caused a lot of the mills around the state of Montana to close. The association was starting to fight back, though, and so they would start their journey in Eureka, Montana. If you don't know where that's at, it's about 9 miles from the Canadian border, and they started to roll south towards Darby, Montana, where they embarked on a 250-mile-long journey. And so they were heading to Darby because there was a mill operated by the Darby Lumber Company that had recently closed because of the lack of logs to saw. And so Lyle Doty and the rest of the Loggers Association caught word of this, and he orchestrated a convoy of logging trucks to showcase the strength in the logging community, as well as kind of a last-ditch effort to save the mill from closing down and causing loggers a place to no longer take their logs. So, as the trucks passed through Missoula, the convoy stretched up to 15 miles long. That is absolutely incredible. Incredible, the unity behind that. And just the long line of log trucks, that's awesome. And so a crowd formed, and national television and other media outlets showed up on the morning of May 13th, and they highlighted the Great Northwest Log Haul because it was underway from loggers around the state, as well as loggers from Washington, loggers from Idaho, and loggers even from Oregon, all coming together as one to unify. So after a 250-mile long journey, Lyle and the Loggers Association arrived in Darby, Montana, and the Darby Mill was now guaranteed several weeks of operations because of their efforts. But more importantly, the loggers had shown their collective strength to a national audience that the log haul served not just as a jolt to the mill in Darby, but also as a shot in the arm to the entire logging industry, that they can come together as one, and showed their true strength. A sense of camaraderie also emerged as the logging community saw the strength and the success of their cooperative effort. While their protest did have immediately impact, it was ultimately short-lived, though. The following year, the mill had closed, and timber sales and harvesting levels declined throughout the state of Montana over the next several years. Ultimately, it took a hit, and Lyle's logging career was started in 1970, and it lasted up until 2009. But then, like so many others, the logging industry was hit hard by the Great Recession. The demand for wood had plummeted, and after decades of hard work, he had to sell everything. He eventually started over again. He started over in a little town you may know as Conrad, Montana. He decided to retire. But retirement didn't mean slowing down for him. Even at the age of 70 years old, he still bought a house and lived on 20 acres. He stayed busy by tending to the land with his John Deeres and mowing with his Z-Turn mower, because that gives him a great sense of purpose. And plowing his neighbors out in the wintertime, plowing out their driveways, he still has that sense of purpose and drive in him. Even at 87 years old, he still refuses to stop working. That's just who he is. So what my grandfather had taught me is success is not handed to you. It's earned through hard work and resilience. His story has shaped me, and it's made me realize something even bigger. Something that everybody has a story. Every single person walking through this earth has a story to be told, a journey, a path that has led them to where they are today. Some stories are filled with joy and triumph, while others carry heartbreak and struggle. You know, some may have chapters of uncertainty, some moments of feeling lost, and some pages that we wish we could rewrite. But I promise you, those do not define you. But no matter what your story looks like, whether it's messy, unfinished, or if it's just beginning, I promise you it matters, and you matter. You know, we often convince ourselves that our experiences aren't significant enough to be shared, that no one would care. But I promise you that's far from the truth. I'm guilty of thinking that too. But you know what? Here's the truth. Someone somewhere needs to hear your story. Let them know your story. Maybe they've been through some battles. Maybe the same heartbreak. Maybe the same doubts. Maybe they just need to know that they're not alone. And maybe they're searching for hope, for inspiration, or for maybe proof that they can overcome whatever they are facing in this stage of life. Life has seasons. Your journey, with all its highs and all its lows, has the power to impact someone else's life, to encourage them, to remind them that even in the hardest moments, they are not alone. So that's exactly why I created my podcast, The Stories That Shape Us. It's dedicated to sharing real and raw, inspiring life experiences. And if you're willing to come on and tell your story, I applaud you, because this is a safe space to do it. A place where your voice will be heard and where your journey will be respected. And who knows, you might help someone in the audience who needs to hear exactly what you have to say. I also want to say that your story isn't not over yet. Keep living it. Keep embracing it. And when you're ready, don't be afraid to tell it. Shout it from the rooftops, because that is who you are today. You are not defined by the mistakes you have made in the past. You never know whose life you might change. But I know I'm very guilty of this, but don't sell yourself short either. Celebrate the small wins, because you know what? You never know how it may snowball into something bigger. But you ever notice how we always wait for something massive, something life-changing, something bigger, some life-changing moment to feel proud of ourselves? Like we got to win the lottery or launch a Fortune 500 company. Or even this, suddenly wake up with a six-pack of abs. You know what? Yeah, I'm doing all right. But here's the thing. Life isn't just made up of grand victories, right? It's made up of the small wins. And if you don't learn to celebrate them, you're going to spend your whole life feeling like you're behind. All right, let me ask you this. Today, did you check something off your to-do list? Maybe it was as simple as finally responding to that email that's been staring you down for a week. That is a win within itself. You could have ignored it for another day or another month, let's be honest. But you got it done. That's progress. You deserve to be celebrated. Or how about this? Maybe you learned something new today. It doesn't have to be quantum physics or becoming a rocket scientist. Maybe you figured out how to unclog your sink without calling your dad for the 5th time this year. Or maybe you finally learned how to pronounce charcuterie board without embarrassing yourself at a family dinner. That's growth within itself. That's a win. So yeah, I think we need to celebrate the small wins. But how about this one? This is the last one. Let's talk about alarms. Everybody loves alarms, right? Oh yeah, nothing like a soothing sound of your phone screaming at you at 6 a.m. to wake up. And have you ever noticed the best night's sleep that you usually get is about 10 minutes before your alarm goes off, and it goes whipping you from the depths of a dream where you were rich and enjoyed somewhere on a beach? Well, you actually got up when you said you would, instead of hitting the snooze 47 times. That's a win too. So let's be real. Alarm clocks are the enemy, and every day you defeat the enemy. Maybe not Saturday and Sunday, but within that self, that's a win. With all seriousness, yet for some reason, we act like these things don't count. We glorify the millionaires, we put celebrities on pedestals, and we act like the only people worth celebrating are the ones with yachts, private jets, and money in the bank. Why is that? When did having money become the only measure of success? What about celebrating yourself? Pushing through a tough day? What about celebrating your friend for finally standing up for themselves? What about giving yourself credit for, keeping it together when life is throwing punches at you? You don't need $1 million in the bank to be proud of yourself. Come on. You don't need to be viral on TikTok or have over 1 million Instagram followers to be successful. You don't. You don't need to be a viral success story to be worth celebrating. Life is happening now. And if you only wait for the quote unquote big moments, you're missing out. You're missing out on all the small victories that make up who you are. So, like I said, I'm talking to myself right now too. You need to stop selling yourself short. Celebrate the small wins. They're building blocks of everything and everything that you'll ever do. All right, I'm wrapping up here. So in conclusion, as I wrap up my first episode of The Stories That Shape Us, I just want to say thank you again for joining. I appreciate your support of being here. I can't help but reflect on the impact of my life that my grandpa Lyle has had on me. He wasn't just a grandfather, but he was a mentor, a role model, and the kind of man that leads by example. One that leads through his work ethic, his determination, and his belief that anything is possible. And if you're willing to put in the effort, I promise you, you will go far. He instilled in me the very values that I carry with me today. His story reminds me, and I hope it reminds you too, that success is not going to be built overnight. It's built in the early mornings and the late nights, in the moments when no one's watching, and the commitment to keep pushing forward when it's tough. Because there will be tough moments. Life is full of valleys and mountaintops. He also showed me that hard work isn't just about getting ahead, but it's about building something that's meaningful, something that's lasting, and something that you can have fun with and enjoy doing every day. And that's why I want to leave you with this. Don't sell yourself short. The small wins, yeah, they matter. Every step forward, every lesson learned, every challenge you've overcome, it all adds up. Too often I get focused on the destination. I'm a very projected, planned out thinker. Where do I want to be in 5 years? Where do I want to be in 10 years? Right? But we often forget to appreciate the journey that we're on. And so if there's one thing that I've learned from my grandfather's legacy, it's that the journey is the reward. So whatever it is that you may be working towards, whatever dreams you may be chasing, celebrate the progress, embrace the process, and honestly, keep showing up for yourself. I'm proud of you. Because the stories that shape us aren't just the big defining moments, but they're the small victories along the way, the quiet efforts, and the choices we make every single day. This whole episode makes me think of a scripture in the Bible, and it's James 2 through 4. And in that Bible verse, it says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you may face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of faith produces perseverance. Let the perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete and not lacking anything." Wow. God's word definitely gives you a roadmap to success. But in all seriousness, no matter where you are in life, where you are in your journey, I challenge you to embrace the process. Embrace the suck, is what I like to say. There's going to be valleys. There's going to be things that push you down, but you always get up. So just trust in the work you're putting in and know that every step forward is shaping your story. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening and for being a part of this journey. Like I said, this is just the beginning, baby. I can't wait to be sharing these stories with you. Actually, get this. Next week on The Stories That Shape Us, we're sitting down with our very first guest. How exciting is that? Someone with an incredibly inspiring story of resilience, determination, and overcoming adversity. They've faced challenges that could have held them back, but instead they're pushing forward and making it out on the other side. You know, you won't want to miss this powerful conversation because it is powerful. And it is a reminder that what life throws at you, there's a way to keep pushing forward. So until next time, keep working, keep believing, and keep shaping your own story. And this is The Stories That Shape Us. Join us each week as we hear real stories, real growth, and real impact. Thanks for listening.